Hi. In this video I'll talk about typical jazz instruments, and I know I've probably left some of them out. So let me know what other instruments should be added to this list, and how would you rate them on this scale. Needless to say, this is my opinion, so take everything with a grain of salt. Just don't get too salty. I'm just having fun. In the first place we have the clarinet. I think it's very rare nowadays that people use the clarinet in jazz pieces anymore. I think even a few decades ago it wasn't very common. The only remarkable jazz compositions I remember now are some by the good old Benny Goodman. He's even got a piece called Clarinetitis, and I think it was written in the 20s. And I mean, it sounds alright, but I think you need to have a very special insight and feel for the clarinet to be included. The tone doesn't sound very fit for jazz, to me at least, and I find it more pleasant for classical, and even then, it's better in solos than in arrangements. So the clarinet gets a C tier for me. I have nothing against it, so it stands right in the middle. Next we have the piano. I love it. I think you can manage to play a kick-ass jazz performance with the piano alone. You can play melodies and chord voicings at the same time, and it just fits so well with every other instrument. It's the cool guy. He gets along with everyone. So this gets an irrefutable S tier for me, more specifically the grand piano. The upright piano is okay, but I can't help thinking it is a low-budget version of the full experience. Third, we have the alto sax. I'll spill the beans now. I fucking hate the alto sax. Hearing it anywhere, these annoying high-pitched sounds, makes me want to fill my ears with hot lava. And I guess this is because I learned to associate it with the tamest, most soulless types of jazz. I know there are some good alto players. I mean, Anthony Braxton has got an album called For Alto, and it's brutal as fuck, but kind of in a Pavlovian way. The alto sax sounds invariably remind me of what most people's idea of jazz is, meaning elevator music and royalty-free corporate tunes. I just really hate it, so it gets the F tier. It's only good for impressing clueless people on Instagram and TikTok, or Swedish house music with the most cookie-cutter licks you will ever hear. Now we have the vibraphone. Again, not a very common instrument for today's standards, but very good albums have come out using it. I can think of one of my favorites, Out to Lunch by Eric Dolphy, or Milt Jackson in the Modern Jazz Quartet. It's quirky and fun, however it does feel a bit out of place in most tunes, so this one gets a C tier. Next on the list we have a soprano sax. Frankly, the only reason I know about this instrument is because of Coltrane's performance on My Favorite Things, but not even the Great Train could get a compelling sound out of it. Sounds like a magpie, and at the same time is too mellow and safe to be interesting. But provided I haven't heard too many pieces, including the soprano, I'd be speaking out of ignorance, so I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and place it in the E tier. Doesn't do it for me, but I know there might be some cool material with it. Next we have the drums. I'm talking about the classic jazz combo. Bass drum, snare, hi-hat and ride. That's it. We don't need no more. I think drums can add some extra spice and energy to jazz compositions. It's just a shame most players I've known or heard play it too safely and go for the classic swing feel, and barely anything else. I think this is the only thing keeping drums from being an S tier, the fact that it's mostly used as the foundation for the rhythmic section, and rarely as an instrument with the same right to get crazy and experiment as the melodic instruments. Drums get an A tier for this reason, but some players like Tony Williams definitely get the S tier, single-handedly. Now we have the trumpet, in my opinion an underrated instrument that can be as powerful as a saxophone. The only drawback from it is the disgusting water key. Really, on a hot summer day all you need to do is get a trumpet player and ask them to play for you, and you'll get your refreshment. On the other hand, many great and iconic jazz albums have a distinct trumpet sound, but it's a shame it's mostly accompanied by a sax. If only on the solos, trumpet usually doesn't get the chance to shine on its own, so it gets a well-deserved A tier. Now we have the tenor sax, the absolute winner for me in this tier list. The sound is so lush and clear, simply so fit for either the coolest or the heaviest and more dense sounds of jazz. There's no doubt about it. Jazz is recognized universally for the sound of the tenor sax. You don't even need to play jazz harmony for people to see you as a jazz musician. Shit, you don't even need to play it. Just leave it there hanging and people will look at you and say, "See? That's a jazz player." Don't be like him if you don't want to starve. So this is an absolute S tier for me. Next on the list we have the electric bass. For most types of jazz, the electric bass is honestly very out of place. I think it has a very limited range, it only works in fusion and funk, and even then could be replaced by a keyboardist's left hand. If it wasn't for some great players like Jaco Pastorius, who had a very horn-like tone on his bass, the instrument would be on the bottom of the list. Seriously, no one wants to hear those fucking scratching noises every time you play a note. It's messy and noisy and muddy, so it gets the E tier. Now let's move on to the upright bass, which is an absolute must if you want to get the jazz feel in every single tune. All you need is the old reliable walking bass and your piece will sound like jazz already. Besides, it looks cool as shit. Look at the goddamn thing. It's as tall as you. It's like you hugging it. It's like saying, I love you, jazz. I give you my entire body. So the upright bass gets a definitive S tier. Next is the electric guitar, probably the most controversial instrument in this list. It's not that the instrument is bad per se. Actually, some of my favorite albums ever include jazz guitar, like In a Silent Way or The Incredible Jazz Guitar by Wes Montgomery. In reality, we have to blame its bad reputation on guitar players, who mostly aren't used to improvisation and are stereotypically oblivious about jazz harmony. For that reason, I have to give guitar a C tier. I guess it's alright, but just like the electric bass, it has a limited range and only has relevance in more modern forms of jazz. The advantage, of course, is that unlike the electric bass, guitar solos don't fucking suck. Finally, on this list, we have vocals. Yes, it's that time. I have already expressed my opinion about singers. I don't blame them. They've been told their whole life that they are great and brilliant and that their talent is unequaled, so it's no surprise there are many absolutely dreadful vocal versions of jazz standards that not only use vocals, but they have fucking lyrics. Seriously, I despise this even more than smooth jazz, especially since the lyrics are so fucking cheesy. It's like they didn't want to be left out of the jazz community once they realized most successful bands didn't even include a vocalist. But they still suck. The only respectable jazz singers, in my opinion, are those who can improvise and use their voices as any other instrument. But fucking hell, still, most jazz singers to me sound very uninspired, as poor excuses to fill that horror vacuum some people seem to have with their tunes. So, screw vocals, I don't care, I don't give a shit. They get an absolute F tier. Alright, that's all for now. So tell me, how would you rate these instruments in the tier list? Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you soon.